Well, it's not so manageable.
So, hello everybody. We are here to discuss something that it's like in our lives, in basically any way we can imagine, technology. And one more thing that crosses all our lives, racism and bias, everything about genders, sexuality. Today, if you want to get a job, if you want to get a car, you have to go through technology, and sometimes this is a problem if you have something in your life that make you different. If you are a black person, if you are indigenous, if you are a woman. So, Kim, I'm going to start with you. And as a Director of General of the European Network Against Racism, you are working with a lot of organizations, and I suppose you're going to talk about this. We have a lot of challenges in this field. So I would like to know, what's the challenges to change the situation?
Thank you for the question. And indeed, there are a lot of challenges. And that's why we take the time to actually, in places like the Web Summit, because for us, one of the important things to remember is that the tech sector are the architects of tomorrow's society. So for us, it's very important that if we want to make tomorrow's society a better place, a more equitable place, a place where each and every one of us has a space, it's very important for us to talk to the architects of tomorrow to make sure that they are doing their part to make that society a reality. And so for us, there are a number of challenges inherent with that. The fact that many of today's coders, many of today's entrepreneurs are only white males is a problem, because it means that we are developing massive gaps. We are developing massive blind spots with regards to what services we need, how they are going to be designed, how they're going to be delivered. So for us, that is a really important aspect, the aspect around representation within the tech sector. The second one is really around funding and the ability to each and every one of us to have a fair chance at creating those businesses of tomorrow. But when we see that funding, equitable funding, only reaches 2% of racialized communities, as opposed to the big 98%, we have a big problem to solve here, and it can only be by working together that we can actually solve it. The third challenge that I see is really around the presence of bias in data sets that are being used to inform and to teach artificial intelligence. So for us, addressing the bias in AI today, now, before AI technology becomes so promiscuous that it's everywhere, it's now that we have to make an intervention to ensure we don't create the dystopia of tomorrow.
It's very good that you talk about AI, and I'm coming back for this one. But I would like to ask Ana about how this works in Portugal, what Portugal is doing to address the subject, to understand what's going on in technology and how we can change everything that Kim said about we need data to understand what's happening. So it's like, I need to know how many black people or how many women are in this position or that position to understand how the bias are working. So what Portugal is doing in this field to change the situation?
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. I think that we work a lot for fight inequalities based on race or gender. But what I think that we should put today as our challenges is how we can fight the fear and the fear of societies. First of all, I think that we all agree that we have two ideas in common. First of all the societies has fear of the difference, fear of the gender, fear of war, fear of peace, fear of being a human being, fear of have opinion. And the second idea that I think that we can share together, all together, is that we need to fight against the fear. Because the technology is not good, technology is not bad, as politicians are not good or bad. We need to work together to have a better democracy and to have a society more inclusion. with more inclusion. And in that issue, I think that Portugal, who works a lot on the last 8 years to have more inequality and to have more women, for instance, on power decisions, and to fight against racism. That's why we think that we should work with all the NGOs and societies, but especially we can have the new technologies as a partner and as a friend to work together against the fear that people have on society, even if it is with people, black people or white people. But we should stay together, to work together.
And Ken, I remember when Google was like tagging black people as monkeys, or when Amazon were using AI to give more chances to white people to get better jobs. So we know how AI can be used to do bad things, but also can help us to turn this over and work for us, doing goods. So I would like to see more about this, you know? And do you have some examples for us and to understand how AI can work for us and not against us?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question. How do we make artificial intelligence work for us? And one of the things I would say is that it's really important that for companies which are thinking about implementing artificial intelligence, that there's a lot of discussions about actually who is in the table making the decisions about what is AI, what is the risk, and how we want to implement and apply the technology. So for us, the people who are around in the room making the decisions about whether we deploy or not has to be a diverse team, because that's the only way to ensure that actually the technologies that we're deploying will work for each and every one of us. So representation is very important. I was very encouraged. I attended an event recently where companies were discussing also how do you ensure that artificial intelligence does not produce discriminatory responses or indeed replicable responses. And so some companies are investing in the creation of prompt schools, actually helping employees within the organization to understand how to use the artificial intelligence in such a way as to not create the discriminatory outcomes, and also to detect when artificial intelligence is creating a discriminatory outcome. So that's really important, actually investing in the workforce, investing in AI literacy, not just in the company, but in society. I think that's going to be something moving forward that's going to be critical. So those are two aspects which I would say are certainly very important for us to consider. And the third one, I think, and this goes back to governments, is stronger legislation. For example, the EU has, since the last 20 years, adopted anti-discrimination legislation, which bans discrimination on the basis of race and ethnicity in employment and beyond. 20 years from now, we are still talking about this. So the legislation isn't fit for purpose for the digital age, and we need to look at how we make the legislation more robust and more capable of dealing with the systemic challenges that AI poses.
That's a good point. So, Ana, I would like to know, like, we have this challenge to work government and tech industry. How these two can work together to try to make this field more equitable? How can we, Kim just mentioned that we have some laws, but how these can apply to the tech sector, or if we need new laws to understand what they are doing and why we can change what they are doing to work in benefits of society.
Well, I think that we have a big challenge on our societies as world on innovation, new technologies, enterprises, but also education, which is the basis of everything. That's why 24 years ago in Portugal, we strongly supported to have new technologies on school. 10 years ago, we have good policies on new technologies at school also. And nowadays, also with the digitalization revolution that we have in our societies, we should first have an enseignement to the children to lead with the new technologies, with the fake news, which becomes an enemy to the democracy. And if you want to have a good and strong democracy, which means good development, economy development, you should have a strong education on this basis. You can have education against, you should tell them that you shouldn't have hate speech, you shouldn't have racism speech. And you can learn in the new technologies with fake news the bad things for the democracy. Well, what I want to try to, I don't know if it is a bigger and stronger legislation, because I know that the law could be good, but you can subvert the law. So what you should do is to educate people, to have more inclusion, more cohesion, based on democracy principles, democracy values. That's why I said a few minutes ago that we lead against the fear. The new technology is fear that the innovation cannot bring development. And I think that the innovation brings development. But as politician, my fear is that the new technology works against democracy. So we should work together, the people who decide, governments, institutions, the people from the new technologies, and saying that the new technology is very good, could be good for democracies if it would be very good used. So even if you have good laws, you can fail. You shouldn't fail if you work together and if we educate young people that our democracy needs respect to the difference, respect with each other, and respect with our future, if you want.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of problems related to democracy and technology around Cambridge Analytica.
That's a big challenge for these years.
It was, and that's the point. It was a gigantic scandal, and nothing changed, basically, and that's the point. So we after that, we saw basically the same thing occurring in Myanmar, Brazil. So it's like, if we don't keep these people accountable, they just can keep going. And that's the point that we have to pay a lot of attention, because our democracy, it has a lot of value for us. And thinking about technology and how this affects our lives, in Brazil, we have some challenges also in this situation. And it's like a lot of states in Brazil doesn't have data about gender or about race. So it's basically impossible to build policies if you don't know the reality, right? And we are here in this stage, and you are an activist in this field. So how do you make governments accountable, how you can pressure governments to change and pay attention to this field?
Yeah, so in the activist field, we would call this equality data. And for us, equality data is absolutely essential for a number of reasons. For the reason of understanding where we are, how big is the problem of racism, how big is the problem of inequities, how big is the issue that we're trying to face, so that we can actually develop action plans and enforcement mechanisms which actually take into account the full breadth of the issue that we're dealing with. The second aspect as to why the data is important is also to hold people accountable. Are we actually making progress? Are these action plans actually delivering? And for us in Europe, we actually have a very big problem with that. So we have a big problem with the inability, and I would say it's not just inability, there's also a lot of political unwillingness to start collecting information that actually detects and determines how big the problem is and how vast the problem is in Europe. And there are many member states and many governments which are actively preventing us from being able to collect that information. We also have a bit of a problem with GDPR and the perception. And I want to underline the perception that GDPR does not allow us in Europe to collect information on the basis of race and ethnicity. It's not true. And the European Commission has issued numbers of statements to say you can collect that information, but there is still that idea that GDPR prevents us from collecting that information. And as a result of that, we have a very patchy understanding of how bad the situation is in Europe, and therefore we also have a very inability to actually implement the right frameworks and mechanisms that actually are addressing the issue. So for us, equality data collection is really key to understand this, and it's the one missing element to enable us to develop laws, legislation, and enforcement mechanisms that actually are going to the root of the problem rather than just doing sugarcoating over it.
Yeah, this is important because we need to be in the same page, to go to the same place,
exactly.
Right? And Ana, what kind of, as Ken was telling us, it's like Portugal, it's just one piece, and we have all the Europe. So what Portugal is doing in this field, like what kind of data you are working on to determine better policies that can find inequality?
Let me tell you, let me go again to the fear and how can technologies fight against fear. First of all, we should have access to information, as you said. That's why we came to have our new agency for integration, migration and asylum, which means it's an agency who wants to give to migrants and refugees all the information that they can have to be legal and safe in Portugal, to live here. But to have more access to information, you need to accept that a society with diversity is a stronger society. You should respect our differences. I don't believe on only one thought. I don't think the same as you and the same as you, but all together we can fix that access to the true information, not the fake news, not the information that you want that people lead. We need to ask people to criticize, to think about what ways they want to do, what bridges they want to build to a society which belongs to the democratic values. We will celebrate 75 years of the declarations of human rights. We should celebrate on these times that we have wars, that we don't have peace, that we have judicial powers trying to make the politicians people as bad people. So I come to my point. Democracy is stronger if you have good policies. Innovation is good if you have the good way to play the role of new technologies. So let's stand together. We don't have devils, but the devil is to have fear to fight against the decent world. And the decent world is to put the new technologies, the artificial intelligence, working for better societies without racism, without inequality. But it is the ideal, the society that we dream of. But we can have less inequalities if you work with good public policies to have inequality.
Yeah, you raise a good point about having the information, but also taking...
You need to know how to use the information. You should have a critical spirit. You should look around you and accept that you are not the only one who has reason. The other one can have reason. So let's us discuss and work together to have a stronger idea for the world. And when you saw the Russia and Ukraine, Gaza and Israel, you should ask to yourself what you can do for the world to have stronger democracies, and strongest democracies needs a criticism idea, needs people who wants to have duties. I'm not certain about the world, but I want to do something and share with the new generation that innovation, we need innovation to become better, but we need really to support a strong education for the people.
Yeah, so it's more than inclusion, it's about human rights. You have the right to exist, you have the right to access. So I'm glad that everybody was here to understand and talk a little more about technology and inclusion, because it's about our future. So thank you.